The Empire had ruled the galaxy for 12,000 years. Their fleets had conquered over 3,000 star systems. Their armies had crushed every species that dared to resist. In all that time, no civilization had ever defeated them in battle. They believed they were the supreme power in the universe, and the evidence supported their belief. High Commander stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Devourer of Worlds. He was a tall creature with gray skin, 4 arms, and mandibles that clicked when he spoke. His compound eyes scanned the tactical display showing their next target, a small yellow star on the outer edge of the spiral arm. 8 planets. The third one showed signs of life. "What do we know about this system?" asked his science officer. "Primitive civilization, Commander. They call themselves humans. They have only recently developed space travel. Their technology is approximately 2,000 years behind our own. They have nuclear weapons, basic satellites, and a few small vessels in orbit around their planet. Standard conquest protocols should be sufficient." Clicked his mandibles in satisfaction. He had conquered dozens of species like this one. They always reacted the same way. First came the denial, then the desperate attempts at negotiation, then the futile resistance, and finally the surrender. Some species were enslaved. Others were exterminated. The choice depended on their usefulness to the Empire. "How long until we arrive?" asked. 3 days at standard hyperspace velocity, Commander." "Excellent. Prepare the fleet. I want this conquest completed within 1 week." The armada consisted of 200 warships. Each vessel was over 5 kilometers long and carried enough firepower to destroy a continent. They had crushed entire civilizations with smaller forces. 200 ships for a primitive species was excessive, but enjoyed overwhelming displays of power. It made the conquered populations more cooperative. What did not know was that the humans had been watching the Empire for 60 years. Admiral Daniel Carter sat in his office at United Earth Defense Force headquarters in Geneva. He was 63 years old with gray hair and tired eyes. He had spent his entire adult life preparing for this moment. On his desk was a report from the Deep Space Monitoring Station on Pluto. The fleet had been detected entering the outer edges of the solar system. They would arrive in 3 days. Daniel picked up his phone and called the one person who needed to know first. Lisa Morgan answered on the second ring. She was the chief engineer of Project Colossus, humanity's greatest and most secret achievement. "They are coming," Daniel said simply. "How long do we have?" 3 days. There was a pause on the other end. "We are at 94% operational capacity. I can push the teams to get us to 97, but full completion is impossible in that. 97% will have to be enough. Meet me at Lunar Station 7 in 6 hours." Daniel ended the call and stood up. Through his window, he could see the city of Geneva going about its normal business. People walking to work, children going to school. They had no idea that an alien armada was approaching Earth with the intention of either enslaving or exterminating every human being alive. They had no idea that 60 years ago, humanity had intercepted communications detailing the systematic genocide of 17 intelligent species. They had no idea that every major nation on Earth had been secretly working together ever since, pooling their resources for a single purpose: survival. Lisa Morgan stood in the observation deck of Lunar Station 7, watching the construction drones complete their final tasks. Before her, hanging in the void between Earth and Mars, was the Sentinel. It was not a spaceship in any conventional sense. It was a weapon the size of a planet. The Sentinel measured 12,000 kilometers in diameter. Its hull was covered with weapon ports, sensor arrays, and shield generators. Inside were power plants that could output more energy than most stars. Its crew numbered over 2 million people, all of whom had volunteered knowing they might never see their families again. The vessel had taken 60 years to build, consuming resources from every nation on Earth, the Moon, Mars, and the asteroid belt. It was the single, largest construction project in human history. And it had been built for one purpose only: to kill anything that threatened Earth. Daniel arrived at the station and joined Lisa at the observation window. For a long moment, they simply stared at their creation in silence. "Do you think it will be enough?" Lisa asked. "It has to be. We will not get a second chance." Daniel thought about the 17 species that had exterminated, the who had been poets and philosophers, the who had built beautiful cities that floated in the clouds of gas giants, the who had developed a form of music that could be heard across light years. All of them were gone now. Their cultures, their histories, their dreams for the future, all erased by the Empire because they had the misfortune of being weaker. Humanity had decided very early that they would not join that list. The decision to build the Sentinel had not been unanimous. Some had argued for diplomacy. Others had wanted to hide, to shut down all transmissions and hope the never-noticed Earth. But the majority had understood a simple truth. The Empire did not negotiate with species they considered inferior. They did not spare planets that might one day become threats. They conquered and they killed because that was what empires did. The only way to survive was to become too dangerous to attack. General Amy Richardson arrived at the station that evening. She commanded the Sentinel's ground defense forces, 200,000 soldiers equipped with the most advanced weapons humanity had ever created. She was a tall woman with short black hair and a scar across her left cheek from a training accident years ago. "The crew is ready," Amy reported. "Morale is high. Everyone understands what is at stake." "Good," Daniel said, "because in 3 days we are going to show the Empire something they have never seen before. We are going to show them a species that refuses to die." The three of them stood together, watching the Sentinel rotate slowly in the darkness of space. Somewhere out there, 200 warships were racing toward Earth, confident in their superiority, certain of their victory. They had no idea what was waiting for them. The Armada dropped out of hyperspace near Jupiter, and for a moment, everything seemed normal. The 200 warships maintained perfect formation as they decelerated into the solar system. High Commander stood on his bridge, watching the tactical displays update with information about this new system. 8 planets, 1 yellow star, and 1 small blue world that would soon belong to the Empire. Then the sensor officer made a sound that had never heard from a soldier. It was a small, strangled noise that came from deep in her throat, the sound of pure terror. "Commander," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, "there is something between us and the target planet." Turned to the main. At first he thought he was looking at a moon. A large spherical object hung in the void approximately halfway between the 4th and 5th planets. It was gray and covered with strange geometric patterns, perhaps a natural satellite that had drifted out of orbit. Then the object rotated slightly and saw the weapon ports. There were millions of them. They covered the surface of the object like scales on a fish. Each one was larger than his flagship, and they were all pointed directly at his fleet. "What am I looking at?" demanded. The sensor officer's hands were shaking as she worked her console. "It appears to be an artificial construct, Commander, approximately 12,000 kilometers in diameter. I am detecting massive energy signatures across its entire surface. Power output is beyond anything in our records." 12,000 kilometers. That was larger than most planets. That was larger than anything the Empire had ever built. That was impossible. "Commander," the communications officer interrupted, "we are receiving a transmission from the object. They are using our language." "Put it through." The flickered and a human face appeared. It was an older male with gray hair and calm eyes. He wore a simple uniform with no decorations or medals. When he spoke, his voice was steady and clear. "This is Admiral Daniel Carter of the United Earth Defense Force. You have entered human space. Your empire's history of genocide is well documented. You will power down your weapons and surrender your fleet, or you will be destroyed. You have 1 hour to comply." The transmission ended. Silence filled the bridge. Stared at the screen for a long moment. Then he began to laugh. It started as a low chuckle and grew into a full roar of amusement. His officers looked at him with confusion. "These primitives," said between laughs, "these insects dare to threaten the Empire. They build one large station and think they can intimidate us." He turned to his tactical officer. "What is the defensive capability of that construct?" "Unknown, Commander. We have never encountered anything of this scale before. I cannot make an accurate assessment." "Then we will find out. All ships, battle formation. Target that station and prepare to fire on my command." The fleet spread out into an attack pattern they had used countless times before. 200 warships, each one bristling with weapons, each one crewed by soldiers who had never known defeat. They moved with the confidence of predators approaching helpless prey. On board the Sentinel, Admiral Daniel Carter watched the enemy fleet arrange itself for battle. He stood in the Central Command Center, a massive chamber located 3,000 kilometers beneath the outer hull. Around him, thousands of officers monitored systems that controlled weapons, shields, navigation, and life support for a crew of 2 million people. Lisa Morgan stood beside him, her eyes fixed on the holographic display showing the positions. "They are not surrendering," she observed. "I did not expect them to," Daniel replied. "They have never lost a battle. They do not know how." General Amy Richardson spoke through the communication system from her position in the Defense Coordination Center. "All ground forces are at battle stations. Shield generators are fully charged. We are ready." Daniel nodded slowly. For 60 years, humanity had prepared for this moment. They had built the largest weapon in the history of the galaxy. They had trained millions of soldiers and engineers. They had sacrificed countless resources and opportunities, all for this single confrontation. "Send a final warning," Daniel ordered. "Give them one more chance." The communications officer transmitted the message. "Fleet, this is your final warning. Power down your weapons and surrender immediately. We do not wish to destroy you, but we will if necessary." The response came within seconds. High Commander appeared on the screen, his mandibles clicking with amusement. "Foolish humans, your threats mean nothing. The Empire has crushed thousands of species across this galaxy. You will be no different. Prepare to die." The transmission cut off. On the tactical display, the fleet began its attack run. Daniel took a deep breath. "All hands, this is Admiral Carter. The enemy has rejected our offer of peaceful surrender. As of this moment, we are at war. All weapons stations, you are cleared to engage on my command." Park sat in the primary weapons control center with 500 other operators. He was 28 years old and had trained for this job since he was 18. His hands rested on the firing controls for a battery of plasma cannons, each one capable of destroying a small moon. Through the neural interface connected to his helmet, he could feel the power humming through the Sentinel systems. Millions of weapons, all waiting for the order to fire. "Weapons standing by," reported through his console. Lisa Morgan's voice came through the command channel, calm and clear. "All batteries, target the lead vessels. Fire on my mark." The fleet was now within weapons range. Their own guns were charging, preparing to unleash a barrage they believed would cripple the human station. "Mark." Press the firing control. Across the entire surface of the Sentinel, millions of weapon ports activated simultaneously. The space between the human warship and the fleet filled with light. And the battle for Earth began. The first destroyer vanished in a flash of white light. One moment it was there, 5 kilometers of advanced alien warship carrying 3,000 crew members. The next moment it was gone, not damaged, not crippled, simply erased from existence as if it had never been built. The second destroyer followed 2 seconds later, then the third, then the fourth and fifth together. High Commander watched his tactical display with growing horror. The human weapons were not like anything he had ever seen. They were not missiles or energy beams or kinetic projectiles. They were concentrated streams of plasma hot enough to vaporize metal instantly, and there were millions of them firing simultaneously. "Return fire," screamed. "All ships concentrate fire on that station." The fleet responded with everything they had. 10,000 missiles launched from their warships, each one carrying a warhead capable of destroying a city. Energy beams powerful enough to crack planets shot toward the massive human construct. The combined firepower of 200 advanced warships struck the Sentinel in a storm of destruction that would have reduced any normal vessel to atoms. The Sentinel's shields absorbed the attack without flickering. Deep inside the command center, Admiral Daniel Carter felt a slight vibration beneath his feet. Nothing more. He looked at the damage report on his console. "Shield integrity at 99.8%, the system's officer reported. Lisa Morgan allowed herself a small smile. The shield technology had been her team's greatest achievement. 60 years of research had produced a defensive system that could absorb almost unlimited amounts of energy. The shields did not simply block attacks. They converted the energy into power that fed back into the Sentinel's own systems. The more the enemy shot at them, the stronger they became. "Continue firing," Daniel ordered. "Target their largest vessels first." Park worked his console with mechanical precision. His neural interface fed targeting data directly into his brain, allowing him to track and engage multiple targets simultaneously. Around him, 500 operators did the same thing. They were just one weapons control center among dozens scattered throughout the Sentinel's massive hull. On the surface, the plasma cannons continued their relentless barrage. Each shot lasted less than a second, but each shot destroyed a warship completely. The alien fleet had no defense against weapons of this magnitude. Their shields, which had protected them against every enemy they had ever faced, offered no resistance. Their armor, which had been designed to withstand nuclear explosions, melted instantly. High Commander watched another dozen ships disappear from his tactical display. His fleet was being slaughtered. In less than 5 minutes, he had lost over 60 vessels. The human station had not suffered any visible damage at all. "Commander, we must retreat," his first officer urged. "We cannot win this battle." "Retreat," spun to face him, his eyes wild with disbelief. "The Empire does not retreat. We have never retreated from any enemy in 12,000 years. If we stay, we will all die. Every ship, every soldier. The Empire will lose this entire fleet." Looked at the human construct filled the display, its surface blazing with weapon fire. It was a machine built for one purpose only: destruction on a scale that had never imagined possible. He had come here expecting to crush a primitive civilization. Instead, he had found a monster. "All ships fall back," ordered, the words tasting like poison in his mouth. "Prepare for emergency hyperspace jump." But the retreat came too late for many of them. The Sentinel's targeting systems tracked the fleeing vessels with perfect accuracy. Ships that turned to run were destroyed before they could spin up their hyperspace drives. Explosions blossomed across the void as warship after warship met its end. The battle lasted 11 minutes from the first shot to the last. When it was over, 163 warships had been destroyed. The remaining 37 had escaped into hyperspace, their crews traumatized by what they had witnessed. High Commander was not among the survivors. His flagship had been targeted in the final moments of the battle, vaporized along with everyone aboard. Admiral Daniel Carter stood in silence, watching the debris field that had once been an invasion fleet. Thousands of soldiers had died in those 11 minutes. He took no pleasure in it. War was not something to celebrate, even when you won. "Begin search and rescue operations," he ordered. "Look for escape pods and survivors. Any we find are to be treated as prisoners of war, not enemies." Lisa Morgan looked at him with surprise. You want to save them, after what they plan to do to us? We are not like them, Daniel replied simply. We fight when we must, but we do not kill when we do not have to. If there are survivors out there, we will rescue them. We will treat them with dignity. And we will show the galaxy that humanity is not just powerful, we are also merciful. The rescue operations found 47 survivors floating in escape pods among the wreckage. They were brought aboard the Sentinel and given medical treatment. Most of them were too shocked to speak. They had never seen their fleet defeated. They had never imagined such a defeat was possible. General Amy Richardson supervised the prisoner processing personally. She looked at the captured aliens with something close to pity. They had come here as conquerors, certain of their victory. Now they sat in holding cells, their entire understanding of the universe shattered. What happens now? One of the prisoners asked her. His name was, and he had been a junior officer on one of the destroyed vessels. That depends on your empire, Amy replied. We have no interest in conquering you. We built this weapon to defend ourselves, not to attack others. If your people choose peace, we will release all of you unharmed. If they choose war, then we will do what we must. Stared at her with confusion. You would let us go after we tried to destroy you. Yes, because that is who we are. The young alien fell silent, trying to understand a species that showed mercy to its enemies. In 12,000 years of history, such a thing had never happened. Defeated enemies were enslaved or killed. There was no other option. Perhaps, thought, there should be. The survivors of the fleet arrived at the imperial capital 3 days after the battle. Their ships were damaged, their crews were broken, and their commanders could barely speak. The story they told was so unbelievable that many in the Imperial Senate refused to accept it. Senator was the first to dismiss the reports. He was an old politician who had never seen combat but spoke constantly of military glory. These are lies, he declared to the assembled Senate. Our fleet cannot have been defeated by primitives. Someone must be held accountable for this failure. Admiral rose to respond. She was one of the few senior military officers who had not been part of the expedition, and she had spent the past 3 days reviewing every piece of tactical data the survivors had brought back. Her face was pale, and her voice was heavy with exhaustion. Senator, I have watched the recordings from our ships. I have analyzed the weapon signatures and shield frequencies. What our fleet encountered was not a primitive species. It was something we have never seen before in 12,000 years of conquest. She activated a holographic display showing the Sentinel. This is an artificial construct approximately 12,000 kilometers in diameter. Its weapon systems destroyed 163 of our warships in 11 minutes. Our combined firepower reduced their shields by less than 1%. This is not a failure of our commanders. This is simply an enemy we cannot defeat. The Senate chamber fell silent, stared at the image of the massive human warship, his earlier confidence draining away. What do you suggest we do? Another senator asked. I do not know, admitted. For the first time in our history, I genuinely do not know. On Earth, humanity was having a different kind of discussion. The victory had been complete, but Admiral Daniel Carter knew that destroying one fleet would not end the threat. The Empire had thousands of warships. They could send another armada, and another after that. Eventually, even the Sentinel might be overwhelmed through sheer numbers. We need to send a message, Daniel said during a meeting with his senior staff. Not a threat, but an offer. We need to show them that we are willing to coexist peacefully if they are. Dr. Wells, humanity's leading expert on language and culture, had been working on exactly this problem. He was a thin man in his 50s with glasses and a perpetually worried expression. They have no concept of peaceful coexistence, he explained. Their entire civilization is built on conquest. They believe that the strong have the right to rule the weak, and that showing mercy is a sign of weakness. Then we need to change their beliefs, Lisa Morgan said. We need to make them understand that strength and mercy are not opposites. Can that even be done? General Amy Richardson asked. We are talking about changing 12,000 years of cultural programming. Nodded slowly. It will not be easy, but they are pragmatic. They conquered the galaxy because they believed it was the only way to survive. If we can show them that cooperation offers better survival odds than conquest, they might adapt. Daniel made his decision. Write the message. Make it clear that we are not interested in destroying them, but that we will not hesitate to defend ourselves and others. Give them a choice they have never had to make before. The message took 2 weeks to compose. Worked with linguists, psychologists, and cultural experts to craft words that would resonate with the mindset. When it was finished, it was broadcast across every frequency in 17 different imperial dialects. People of the Empire, we are humanity. We did not seek this conflict, but we will not shy away from it. Your empire has destroyed 17 intelligent species across this galaxy. There will not be an 18th. We offer you a choice your victims never received. You may choose peace, and we will welcome you as partners in building a better galaxy. Or you may choose war, and we will destroy every fleet you send against us until there are no more fleets to send. We have no interest in conquest or revenge. We want only to live in peace and to ensure that no other species faces extinction at your hands. The decision is yours. Choose wisely. The message reached the capital the same day it was sent. The Imperial Senate convened an emergency session that lasted for 48 hours straight. Arguments raged back and forth. Some demanded immediate retaliation. Others urged caution. A few, very quietly, suggested that perhaps the humans had a point. Back on the Sentinel, the captured prisoners had been watching these developments with growing amazement. The young officer who had spoken with General Amy Richardson requested a meeting with Admiral Carter himself. "Why are you doing this?" asked when they sat down together. "You have the power to destroy our entire empire. Why offer peace instead?" Daniel considered the question carefully. Because power without purpose is meaningless. We built the Sentinel to protect our home, not to conquer others. We have no desire to rule the galaxy or to punish your people for crimes committed by your leaders. We just want to live without the threat of extinction hanging over us. But we tried to destroy you. We would have enslaved your entire species. Yes, and if you try again, we will stop you again. But hatred and revenge only create more hatred and revenge. We would rather break that cycle than continue it. Was silent for a long moment. My people do not understand mercy. We see it as weakness. Then perhaps, Daniel said gently, it is time for your people to learn something new. The young looked at the human admiral with an expression that might have been the beginning of respect. "You are very strange creatures," he said finally. "I do not understand you at all." "Give it time," Daniel replied with a small smile. "Understanding takes time." Meanwhile, in the Imperial Senate, the debate had reached its final stages. The evidence was clear. The humans could not be defeated through military force. The only options were negotiation or annihilation, and annihilation seemed increasingly likely to fall on the side. Senator had fallen silent, his calls for war finding fewer and fewer supporters. Admiral had presented detailed projections showing that even the Grand Armada, 10,000 ships strong, would likely suffer the same fate as the First Fleet. Finally, the Supreme Chancellor rose to speak. "We must face reality," he said. "The age of easy conquest is over. These humans have shown us that there are limits to our power. We can fight and die, or we can adapt and survive. I choose survival." The vote was close, but the decision was made. For the first time in 12,000 years, the Empire would seek peace instead of war. The diplomatic vessel entered the solar system slowly, its weapons powered down and its shields deactivated. It was the first unarmed ship to approach another species in 12,000 years. On board was Ambassador, a senior diplomat who had been chosen specifically for this mission, because of her reputation for intelligence and flexibility. Stood at the observation window as Earth came into view. It was a small blue planet with white clouds and green continents, beautiful in a way that surprised her. There was a harsh place with an orange sky and rocky deserts. She had never seen so much water on a single world before. But it was not the planet that held her attention. It was the massive construct that hung between Earth and the red planet the humans called Mars, the Sentinel. Even from this distance, it dominated the view. A sphere the size of a world, covered with weapons that could destroy anything the Empire sent against it. "They built that in 60 years, her aide whispered beside her. "Our intelligence says they started construction the moment they intercepted our communications." "They knew we were coming," said. "They knew what we did to other species, and instead of running or hiding, they built something to fight us." She shook her head slowly. "These humans are remarkable." The diplomatic vessel docked at a station in Earth orbit. A human delegation was waiting to receive them. At its head was Lisa Morgan, who had been appointed as humanity's chief negotiator. Behind her stood Dr. Wells and a team of cultural advisors. Stepped off her ship and found herself face to face with creatures unlike any she had ever encountered. The humans were soft and fragile-looking, with only 2 arms and smooth skin. They had no claws, no natural armor, no visible weapons built into their bodies. How had such creatures built something as terrifying as the Sentinel? "Welcome to Earth," Lisa said, extending her hand in what had been told was a human greeting gesture. Took the hand carefully, mindful of her claws. "Thank you for receiving us. I must admit I expected more hostility." "We have had enough hostility," Lisa replied. "We are ready for something different." The negotiations began the next day and continued for 2 years. They were not easy. 12,000 years of conquest had created attitudes and assumptions that could not be changed overnight. Many still believed that the strong should rule the weak. Many humans still carried anger over the intended invasion and the fate of the 17 exterminated species. But slowly, step by step, an agreement took shape. The Empire would end all expansionist campaigns immediately. They would provide resources and assistance to any surviving members of the species they had conquered, helping them rebuild their civilizations. They would release all enslaved populations and allow them to return to there. In exchange, humanity agreed to not use the Sentinel for offensive operations and to help establish a new galactic council where all species would have equal representation. Admiral Daniel Carter attended the final signing ceremony, though he had officially retired from military service the year before. He watched as Lisa Morgan, an ambassador, signed the documents that would reshape galactic civilization. "Did you ever imagine it would end like this?" asked him quietly. "No," Daniel admitted. "I thought we would have to fight. I prepared for war my entire life. I never really believed peace was possible." "But you offered it anyway." "Because hope is not about what you believe will happen. It is about what you want to happen and what you are willing to work for." The treaty changed everything. Species that had lived in fear of the Empire began to emerge from hiding. Trade routes opened between worlds that had never communicated before. Scientists from dozens of civilizations shared knowledge, accelerating technological progress beyond anything that had been possible under imperial rule. Lisa Morgan became humanity's first ambassador to the Galactic Council. She worked alongside Ambassador, and over time, the two of them developed a genuine friendship. It was strange at first. They came from species that had been enemies just years before, but they discovered that they shared similar hopes for the future, similar concerns about the past, and similar determination to build something better. One evening, several years after the treaty was signed, they sat together on the observation deck of the council station, watching ships from a dozen species pass by outside. "I have a question," said, "one that has bothered me since I first saw your world." "Ask." Why did you build the Sentinel so large? Surely a smaller vessel would have been sufficient to defeat our fleet. Lisa smiled. It was a question she had been asked many times by many species. We wanted to make a statement. We wanted every civilization in this galaxy to understand something fundamental about humanity. And what is that? That we do not surrender. We do not give up. When someone threatens our home, we respond with everything we have. The Sentinel was not just a weapon, it was a message. Leave us alone or face the consequences. We hoped we would never have to use it, but we also made sure that if we did have to use it, there would be no doubt about the outcome. Consider this. Your species is very strange, she said finally. You are soft and short-lived and fragile, yet you built a weapon the size of a planet because you refused to accept extinction. I do not fully understand you, but I respect you. Understanding takes time, Lisa said. We have plenty of that now. The Sentinel remained in its position between Earth and Mars, a silent guardian watching over the solar system. Other species sent ships to observe it sometimes, marveling at the audacity of a young civilization that had built something so massive simply because they refused to die. Daniel Carter spent his retirement years teaching history at a university in Colorado. He told students about the 60 years humanity had spent preparing for a war that lasted 11 minutes. He told them about fear and hope and the power of refusing to accept the unacceptable. We were scared, he would say. Every day for 60 years we were scared, but we did not let fear stop us. We used it. We channeled it into something productive. And when the moment came, we were ready. The students would listen with wide eyes, struggling to imagine a time when humanity's survival was not guaranteed. Will we ever have to use the Sentinel again? One of them asked once. Daniel looked out the window at the blue sky above. I hope not, he said. We built it so that we would never have to lose, but I would rather live in a galaxy where no one has to fight at all. He smiled. That is what we are building now. A future where the Sentinel can just be a reminder of what we overcame, instead of a weapon we need to use. Outside, the sun was setting over the mountains. Somewhere up there, beyond the atmosphere, the Sentinel continued its endless watch. And across the galaxy, species that had once known only conquest and fear were learning something new. They were learning to hope.